Yeah, it's Julius Bicycle with a bit of a strange name that we have as an organisation. It's a charity that has been working for the last almost 13 years now in supporting the cultural sector and the arts sector in becoming more sustainable, in greening their practice, and above all, and it's quite relevant to what you were saying, also sharing and empowering others in furthering that practice. So yeah, that's what we've been doing. We've been working with different parts of the sector, obviously with some galleries, also museums, theatre, music. Music was in fact the beginning of our work. And regarding that decision, it's a bit of a policy that we have here at Julius Bicycle, really, that we receive loads of invitations, and we're also very grateful to be thought of as kind of people to worth having in a panel and a discussion, and we love being part of those discussions, because that's part of our mission. In fact, is to advocate for the role of culture in climate change, and actually we kind of see that as a cultural challenge rather than a scientific challenge or a technological challenge, because all of those kind of certainties are already there, but actually it's the cultural shift that still needs to change or to happen. So part of that cultural shift is our behaviours, and we want to also express that through the way we conduct ourselves. And obviously we do travel, sometimes we do fly, but we try and be very careful about what those occasions are, and make sure that actually the opportunity will bring further opportunities to do impactful work. I think it's a combination of things, but I think mainly it's possibly a lack of confidence, perhaps, in that the practice that they are developing is good and robust enough to be shared. And it's also this fear that I think we all share as individuals, as organisations, as societies, that whenever we talk about something it has been so politicised and so polarised, that we're basically putting ourselves out there for criticism, and that obviously becoming more sustainable or greening our practice is not something that you can really do overnight. The complex is so huge, it's so wicked, it's so complex, that it is impossible to actually tackle this whole challenge in overnight, or 1 year or 1 month, as much as we would love to. So it takes time, it's a process, it's a journey that we all go on to. And basically what we need to acknowledge, and I think galleries hopefully will acknowledge by next year, and then we'll be happy to share with you what they have achieved or not achieved but tried. It will be it will be an acknowledgement that this is a journey, and that even if it's a very little action that you've put in place, I think it's important to share. We don't have time to reinvent what those actions might do, how they might work. Scientists are very clear in their predictions, and the body of work is telling us that we have a very small window to really curve this huge, massive global problem of climate change and all of the environmental and biodiversity crisis that we're facing. We have a little more than 10 years to do so. So basically we don't have time to work in isolation, to work in silos. We need to break it up. We need to share what works, what doesn't work. We also need to share it, because it might be a way of avoiding someone wasting a year's time trying to do something that actually is not going to yield any results. I wish I had the answer to that. I actually don't, but I think just kind of guessing in a way, I'm going to go back to the conversation that we had just before this interview. And it is where Talking Galleries was created, in terms of actually having a forum for these other conversations that might not happen within the galleries itself, or within those fairs that you organise. And it's actually maybe perhaps is that lack of cohesion as a sector, where you don't find those moments to collaborate further in these spaces. I don't know, that's something I'm asking you. But also because I think galleries are facing, like many other more commercial sectors, like music sector is a very commercial sector as well, but the other sectors perhaps don't face the same way. Like for example, museums are tend to be more funded by public sources, for example. And I think what commercial companies find, and commercial galleries will find probably, is that there's a lot more tension with how the resources and the budgets are deployed. And there's been this misconception that, you know, sustainability was going to cost money rather than save you money. And in some instances, that's not true, because a good management of your resources, and that's a sustainable management of your resources, will yield some savings. And we've seen proof of that. But in some occasions will require you to make tougher decisions about the budget when it comes to different modes of transport, or, you know, they might be a little bit more expensive. And it's a matter of actually having the whole view to be able to make those decisions. What I'm saving here, I might actually be able to use here. And that's actually having an overarching sustainable green strategy that will enable you to actually be able to see the whole picture. I think obviously, you know, there's some specifics, very, you know, characteristics to galleries, but I think that what we need to concentrate rather probably is on, first of all, what are the kind of big areas that we all need to tackle, and identify what our roles are within those areas, what is within our control to change, and what is within our control to influence, and what is completely out of our control. And we just have to perhaps lobby our governments and MPs, and, you know, and do something perhaps a little bit bigger, more political, in those areas where we can't access or have any control. But obviously those areas, when it comes to the environment, when it comes to environmental sustainability, are obviously, you know, the ones that we know, the energy, there's the water, is the resources in terms of like materials and waste, is obviously the travelling. And that's a big one that is very specific to this particular sector. But it's also the other areas that have been perhaps overlooked, like, you know, the biodiversity, and what we could do as organisations with our venues, with our buildings, to support that biodiversity in our spaces. So I think it's about mapping out what all those areas are, and actually thinking about, and obviously food is one big one of them. For example, we tend not to think about, but most galleries will have some sort of like cafe or restaurant space, and it's actually about just mapping out within those areas of influence that we were talking about. Okay, what is it that I can do about my energy? And in terms of galleries and building-based galleries, will be about, you know, how efficient is your building, what the fabric of that building is, whether it uses mainly electricity or uses gas, and actually there's a technological transition to be made in that sense. All buildings will have to go towards electrification in the next 10 years, and that means changing certain infrastructure for other when the time comes. But also, where does your energy come from? Is it 100% renewable? That's a decision that you could make tomorrow. It can be done overnight, and it will have a massive impact. And then same you can do about, you know, the food. You can say the same about the water. And it will be an element of infrastructure, an element of behaviour in all of these things. And it's the same with the transport. And I think, you know, there's certainly things that can be done about greening those transport impacts, or just reducing them. Yeah, basically it's a hard one. Travel is a difficult one to grapple with. Obviously, you know, choosing train over plane where possible is going to be a good choice. In terms of the tending, you mean, right? To reduce those emissions. But then there is it's a conversation also to be had about. There's only so much that we can, and this is the area that at the moment we cannot really control. You know, the air flight is at the moment is not very sustainable. In a very globalized sector like galleries, where, you know, you have to connect, it has to happen. I think the first step is actually to know it, to be aware of it, to measure it, and once you know what that figure looks like in terms of your carbon footprint arising from your travelling, is to make a decision on whether you would like to do something else about it, apart from knowing it and communicating, which I think is the basic of it, to really understand it first and be able to communicate it. But also, you know, deciding whether you want to perhaps compensate some of that impact. And there are many ways.
Which ways?
Yeah, there are many ways that it could be done. I mean, not many ways, but it doesn't have to be just what the market decides in terms of what a ton of carbon is worth. You can decide to give that ton of carbon a value, because I think at the moment what the carbon is valued on is probably very cheap. If you think about the actual consequences that are being lived and experienced by all sorts of beings, including human beings around the world. So you can choose a project that you're close to in your community that are doing something around the environment, a community that is working with people that might have been displaced because of or due to a combination of different disasters, including climate disaster, and perhaps just invest in those community projects. Or it might be that you just want to invest it in furthering and bettering your environmental strategy for the next year, and actually say, well, this is my carbon footprint this year, I'm going to give it this value, and this is going to go straight into the budget for next year to make my footprint smaller. I think all decisions and all stances like that are very important. It might seem small to some people, it might be incredibly radical and difficult to others. I think it's great that they made that decision. I think it's brave, and I think more people should do things like this. And I think it would be very interesting to see what comes out of that. I think we were discussing earlier, whether they're going to do something perhaps different, how they're going to, what they're going to bring at the back of this. But I think what we shouldn't underestimate is I'm just going to bring it back to the role, of the arts and culture in general, and the impact they can have on people's lives. And I think we shouldn't underestimate what our actions actually mean to society, and the things that we do, and how they quickly, create this domino effect, butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it, where others get inspired, whether it's out of pure competition feelings, this healthy competition, or literally just inspired and actually be like wake up call kind of moment. So I think we shouldn't underestimate this. I mean, just literally yesterday this morning I was reading about the globes, for example. The menu was 100% vegan, which is a bold move that was celebrated by artists, and I think we're seeing these kind of statements more and more from organizations and companies within the culture, within the arts and the culture, and I think we need more of those. We need more brave moments like this until they stop being moments and they just become the norm, because that's what we need. Well, I think there are particular. I don't know of any within the actual sector, like gallery sector, but I know there are artists who are trying with their presence, their platforms, the level of influence, to leverage that influence, and wherever they go to different venues, to put forward what we call a green rider, which is basically a set of requests from the artist to the venue. And I'm just talking from a kind of very kind of perspective now, from musicians' perspective, but I think this can be applied to artists within the art sector in the galleries, where you can actually just make some recommendations to the galleries where you're going to be exhibiting your work, and actually say, I would really like these galleries to be aligned to this, to these principles, and to tick these boxes, because these are the minimum boxes for for me in a way. And actually just to also perhaps explore the potential communications opportunities that can come out of actions like that, that can be very powerful as well. When a gallery and an artist decide to influence one another, to tell that story, I think that can also be very powerful. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that can happen in more and more now, as we know in the last year or so, more than a year now. There's been a swell in the in the public perception, or the importance that climate is taking in people's minds and imagination is going over the roof, as it should be really, and I hope it stays there. I hope so. And I think you know, if galleries and artists want to play a relevant role, we'll have to play a really strong part, because everything that we do matters, whether big or small, and we're going to have to do it together.